Trucker Dump, episode 141. Today we've got a fun and informative interview with Ellen Voie from the Women in Trucking Association, which is a nonprofit organization that aims to help and promote women truckers. But before we get to that, we got a bunch of news to catch up on, including a major corridor opening back up, mirrorless trucks, deaf truckers, and sexual harassment. We'll also look into what happens to your ELD data and what happens after a trucker has a stroke or a seizure. Of course, we'll also catch up with what the government is up to, including truck tolls, GPS apps, EPA guidelines, and I'll give you an update on the California Lease-Operator debacle. And we'll finish up with a couple of stories that involve truckers in pain. To close out, we got a twofer yummy trucker grub from driver Chris Mack, and we'll have a few quick emails from Daniel, Brandon, and Steve. This episode of Trucker Dump is sponsored by Volvo Trucks.
Welcome to Trucker Dump, where you'll get one driver's insights and sometimes humorous views of truck driving and the trucking industry, and pretty much anything else he feels like dumping on you. This podcast is brought to you by AboutTruckDriving.com, resources to help you understand the world of truck driving through the use of stories and a pathetic attempt at humor.
What up, homies? How you doing out there? You know, I hope your day went a lot better than mine, because by the time I got home, I had food poisoning. Pretty sure it was that really well done hamburger I had at Hardee's last night. Yeah, that patty was a little dark. I thought it was just maybe a little overcooked, but I'm pretty sure it was probably sitting under the heat lamp for about 4 hours. Anyway, that's what I get for eating out all the time, right? Actually, boy, I've been having some really bad luck with fast food lately. I ate at Arby's the other day, got some curly fries, which are normally pretty awesome, and they were basically like chewing leather shoestrings. So maybe it's my conscience saying, "Hey, dork, you need to quit eating at fast food restaurants, you fat pig." It could be. And who knew my conscience was a little girl? Anyway, for those of you new to the show, you're probably wondering, who is this nut job talking about food? Hey, my name's Todd McCann. I am the host of this podcast, obviously. I'm a 22-year truck driver. I am a blogger. I'm a podcaster. I'm a freelance writer when somebody wants to pay me to do it. And I've written 2 books. One is called How to Find a Great Truck Driving Job, and the other is called Trucking Live. Check them out at abouttruckdriving.com. Check out the special discount, 25% off if you get both books. Link in the show notes. I would like to open the show by thanking you for downloading this podcast or streaming it or however you're getting it. That is greatly appreciated. It's always nice to see the numbers going up a little bit, and it's great to be able to show that to advertisers, and it really helps. So if you are not subscribed to the podcast, please do so. You can do that through iTunes or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Just do it right within your podcast app. So anyway, we did have a mega episode last time. Did you notice it was almost 3 hours? That was by far my biggest one. I think the previous one was maybe 2 hours, just a little over, but this one went just under 3 hours. So I didn't hear any complaints from anybody that it was too dang long, which I've never had complaints from any of you truckers out there, that's for sure, because you're just looking for content. You wish I'd put more podcasts out, so you don't care if they're long. Didn't hear any complaints, though, so appreciate you letting me get through all those feedbacks. I hope you enjoyed that episode. I didn't hear anybody say it sucked, so I'll take that as a plus. So anyway, let's get popping with the news. What do you think? You know, usually we open the news segment with some boring recall that means you got to take your truck in and get something fixed and you got downtime and all that stuff. Well, you know what? This time we're going to go with some good news. How about that? Now, I don't know if you remember this, but way back last year, we were talking about a shutdown in Birmingham, Alabama that was going on. They were redoing a bridge on I-59/I-20, and that place was shut down for a long time. Honestly, it wasn't too bad if you were just heading down a 20 or 59, because trucks are supposed to be taking the 459 route around anyway. If you're not doing that, shame on you, because it's really only 3 miles further. It looks further on the map, but it's only about 3 miles further. So you should be going around anyway. But if you were going 65 north from 2059, then it was a major pain in the I almost said that, didn't I? But major pain in the butt to hit 65 north. So anyway, they opened that up somewhere around like mid-January. I think it was January 21st. And that should be open for everyone to cruise on through there again. Don't be naughty and go through the middle of town if you don't need to. Go around on 459. Besides, there is still going, they did say in the article that I found on overdriveonline.com, link in the show notes, that said in there that there is still ongoing construction around that area. So just because the bridge is open does not mean things will not, still be slow. So you still want to take that 459 around if you can. I mentioned show notes. Let me go ahead and knock that out. If you are listening on a podcast app, be sure to just look around in there somewhere. Podcast apps are all different, so just swipe left, swipe right, whatever you got to do to try to find these show notes. It'll be a long list of articles, links. They should be clickable. You might even see some images if your if your app supports it. So if you want to have a look at my ugly mug, welcome to it. You probably just leave your screen blank. It'd probably be best. If you don't have that or you're listening on the website, just go to abouttruckdriving.com, and this is episode 141, and all of the show notes will be right down there at the bottom. Again, you can click on everything in here. And hey, let's say we keep this good time party going with some more good news, because of course it's going to turn to crap eventually. So what do we got here? This is actually some good news, and actually something I've wanted for a long time. It's weird where this is coming from, though. This is an article called Senators Call for More Truck Info on Popular GPS Apps. This I found on overdriveonline.com, link in the show notes. This is actually some senators calling out for this, which is kind of amazing to me. I was thinking, that maybe well, maybe I should explain what's going on here first. A couple of senators called on companies like Google, Apple, Waze, the more popular navigation apps, to add information like low bridges and restricted routes and weight restricted bridges and things like that within their apps. Now, I've been calling for this for a long time. I wish they would do it. I've even said that if Google would do it, that I would actually pay extra to add that feature to the Google Maps thing. Because right now I just, I've got enough experience and I know how to read a regular map that I can just look at my regular map. I can compare it to my Google and just I can get the mileages and stuff easier off Google Maps. And then, generally I know if a road is restricted or not on the routes that I travel. But a lot of new drivers don't. And, they follow these GPSs, and if they don't have a truck specific one, they're going to follow, like, for instance, they use like the parkways in New Jersey. A lot of those, well, pretty much all those, anything labeled a parkway, the way I understand it, trucks are not supposed to be on it. But, if you're using Google Maps, it's going to send you right down that route. And then, truck hits a low bridge. It's bad PR for everybody, and nobody wants that. So anyway, a couple of senators are calling on these, these tech companies to add this feature to it. I think it would be great. Like I said, I would even pay extra for it if they would do it. I don't know if they're going to do it or not. These guys say that it would be fairly easy to add it. But to me, it's kind of like, I'm not a developer. I'm not a software developer. And we often say, well, why don't you just add this feature? It can't be that hard. Well, we don't know, We're just truckers. We don't know if, unless you are a software developer who also drives a truck, maybe you do know. But the rest of us, we just assume something's easy, but it might not be easy. Personally, I just think they're marketing, Apple Maps, Google Maps, and Waze, stuff like that. They're just looking at the big mass market. They want to get something out there free for everybody. And, I honestly don't know how they're paying for it, but, well, Apple pays through really, really, really expensive hardware. God knows I know that. But, yeah. Anyway, I thought this was interesting coming from senators, like I said, and I would love to see it happen. Again, I don't have truck GPS, so too cheap for that. You guys know me. So next up, let's stay on overdriveonline.com. We got an article from Matt Cole. I got an article called Connecticut Governor Proposes Trucks Only Tolls Plan with Rhode Island Tolls Lawsuit Still Unresolved. So, well, the headline basically says it all. If you remember correctly, we talked about this in the past, that Rhode Island had they didn't consider, they were trying to get through a trucks only toll, to fund their transportation needs for, Rhode Island. And the ATA, which is the American Trucking Association, for all of you outside of the trucking industry or new to it, the American Trucking Association, ATA, decided to file a lawsuit on that, and that has gone up. It has been ruled that it's going to go up to the federal courts. So that's still undecided whether that is actually a legal practice to toll trucks only. But you know what? It doesn't make any difference to Connecticut because they're going forward with a plan to do the exact same thing. Apparently, this has been a fight over the transportation in Connecticut for quite some time. Of course, Democrats against Republicans. That's the way it goes. Apparently, Senator Lamont, who is a Democrat, proposed a plan to toll both cars and trucks, but his fellow Democrats, who it says control both chambers of the state legislature, they're not keen on tolling constituents, and they countered with a plan for trucks only tolls. Oh, isn't that nice? Yeah, let's get all the out-of-state truckers to pay for it. Wow. Oh, well, politicians, what can we expect? So anyway, let's hope the Rhode Island thing gets up to the federal courts and they decide and say, you know what, that's a load of crap. If you're going to toll, put it on everyone, not just truckers. Ridiculous. I mean, they're talking about 12 bridges along major thoroughfares in the state. Said the rates would vary by location, but for truckers, the charge could be between $6.40 or $19.20, for each of the 12 locations. That's ridiculous. Yeah, us truckers, we're just full of money. We just got money running out our yin-yangs, right? Yeah, we can just pay for the tolls. We can fund their entire transportation bill. Oh, what a joke. Well, I told you it was going to turn to crap, right? Well, it did. Let's keep on the crap roller train, right? Another article on overdriveonline.com. This one's called FMCSA Grants a Waiver for Mirrorless Camera Systems. Okay, first time they've done this. They granted it to a mirrorless rear view camera system. And basically, it's just a couple of little screens that are on the A-pillars. Hey, how do you like that? I remembered what an A-pillar is. Last time, if you remember, I had all kinds of hard time remembering what that pillar was up there. Anywho, enough about my ignorance. Yeah, basically it's just a camera system that, they're going to be able to use that instead of actual mirrors sticking out from the side. They say it is safer in every single way. They say it basically eliminates, well, they don't say it basically, they say it does eliminate all blind spots, and it expands the field of view by an estimated 25%. That's over, the standard mirror sticking out there. And, in theory, this all sounds great. They even talk about it's got enhanced vision in inclement weather. With these cameras, they can see in low light better. Okay, I get it, but here's the problem. These cameras go bad, and what are you going to do? I mean, you've got no backup. You've got no mirror sticking out there. And the bigger problem I see is there's no parts. Like if you had to stop in, you busted a mirror, maybe some trucker busted your mirror off, whatever. You could probably go to a Freightliner or a International or something like that, get another one stuck on there pretty darn quick. You could probably even do it yourself if you were mechanically minded, which I'm not, but normal truckers could. But that's because those things are readily available because everybody has mirrors, and a lot of them are the same. So it just doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, what happens? Are you going to be shut down at a truck stop waiting on this company to send a new camera system over, and it's going to take, 2-3 days? I don't know. It creeps me out a little bit. I get that the future's coming, and, it'd be great to have better visibility. It'd be great to see in the dark. Who doesn't want that ability? I want to be like a Navy SEAL and see in the dark, but hey, I can't. I'll stick with my mirrors. If one of you other suckers wants to drive this truck, let me know how it goes. All right, let's get back to a little bit of good news. Well, maybe temporary good news. Not sure how to take this yet. Anyway, you remember the last podcast we talked about the ABC test laws in California that were basically, these ABC laws are designed to figure out whether a truck, well, not just truck, but all kinds of industries, whether they are an independent contractor or whether they are actually an employee. And, what the state of California is saying is that a leased trucker who is leased onto only one company is basically an employee, and they were not allowing those people to operate in the state. So either, like if you worked for a company in Wisconsin and you were leased to them, but you lived in California, they were saying you either had to find a new carrier or you had to move out of the state. And, that's just not cool. Although I don't know why anybody wouldn't want to leave the state of California, but that's beyond the point. Anyway, we did get a brief reprieve on this. Apparently, a U.S. district judge stepped in, and they are forbidding the state from enforcing these new laws on carriers and owner-operators until a pending lawsuit is brought and finalized from the California Trucking Association, who sued the state about this junk. Apparently, pretty much everybody involved in this thinks that the appellate courts and eventually the Supreme Court will uphold this and keep truckers, leased guys able to go into California and able to live there because of something called the Federal Aviation Administration Authorization Act. Boy, that's a mouthful. The FAAAA or 4FA. Boy, gotta love that stuff. Anyway, this act was from 1994, and it forbids states from enacting laws that, quote, interfere with prices, routes, and service of motor carriers. So in layman's terms, they say the federal government, not states, regulates interstate trucking operations. So if that's the case, California can't make this special rule, which that would be great because, the California Trucking Association says up to 70,000 owner-operators would be affected by this rule if it goes into effect. And again, like I reported in the last podcast, this is not just truckers. This is all kinds of different industries, especially like all the tech companies out there and stuff that use a lot of independent contractors would be affected by this. And again, they somehow mentioned strippers, and I'm not sure how that falls into it, but even the stripping industry would be affected by this. And we can't have that, right? Hey, if you guys want to go give your money to somebody who's going to give you nothing, great. Have at it. All right. Anyway, we did get a brief reprieve in this. So for now, until this other case is decided, everybody's cool. All you owner operators can keep operating in California and be happy. And if you're the praying type, you better get praying, because if this does not get knocked down in the courts, lots of other states are lined up to do the exact same thing. Yeah, boy. All right. Speaking of California, here is a California-related story. Again, this is on overdriveonline.com. This article is by James Gillette. Again, I hope I'm saying that right. I really need to figure out how to say that since he writes so many articles on here. Anyway, this one is called In Push for Stricter Truck Emissions Regs, EPA Also Presses for 50-State Program. Okay, let me just summarize this pretty quick. Basically, the Environmental Protection Agency, that's the EPA, they are trying to create a standardized 50-state, all across the board. This is what the EPA rules are. As you may or may not know, most of the time when it comes to EPA, California is leading the way. And that is a problem, in my opinion, because they are always pushing things way farther than they need to go. Now, granted, we've had good strides, if you want to look at it this way. They say there has been a reduction in heavy-duty truck tailpipe emissions of NOx and particulate matter by 90% since these 2016 regs were put into place. Okay, that's all great. let's ignore the fact that we've got sensor lights going on and a check engine lights on all the time because of all of this DEF and EGR and all this emissions crap that's been put on these trucks. It's great. Oh, it's great. Yeah, but truckers are down all the time because of these issues. I've had a check engine light on in my truck for about a month. They turn it off and it comes right back on again, and it's always emissions related anymore. The vast majority of my truck problems in the past, 15 years probably have been related to EPA issues, and these, like I say, these EGR valves and stuff. I don't even know what an EGR valve does, but all I knew is if they said it was the EGR valve, I knew I was going to be stuck somewhere for a couple of days and it doesn't seem to be much better. But anyway, the EPA is planning on another 25% emissions deduction by the year 2026. And again, they want that to be all standardized across all the states. I don't know. They want to do this by doing things like regulating how many cylinders fire when you're in low fire might be the wrong word since it's a diesel, but you get the gist of it. How many cylinders operate while you're in, low speed traffic situations or at idle or something like that. And they're going to work on how much emissions is kicked out at idle and, when you're stopped in traffic and things like that. Anyway, I don't know how they're planning on squeezing out another 25%, but they're always pushing things. And I just cannot imagine what this is going to do for people who own their own trucks or, just the costs involved with all that junk and all the downtime that's involved with it. And, for us guys who are company drivers, how much time we're going to lose actually driving because trucks are in the shop. So anyway, again, I think that the bigger point on this is, they're saying, well, we need to have a 50 state, we need to have all 50 states on the same page. Well, the problem is, like I said, California always leads the way on these things. And because they do, pretty much everybody else falls into line eventually. I mean, look at the side trailer skirts. That was a California only thing. But because every trucking company wanted to be able to operate in California, they started putting side skirts on all of their trailers. And they had to do that just to run in one state, and it's ridiculous. So anyway, that's what's going on with this. Surprisingly to me, the ATA, which is the American Trucking Association, and OOIDA, which is the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association, were both there. And some organization, I can't remember what they're called, organization that builds motors and things like that, truck manufacturers, some kind of I can't remember what the name of that company or that organization was, and I don't see it in my notes. Anyway, they're all standing up there praising this thing, and I'm like, really? I mean, I guess I could kind of see the ATA doing it, but I'm a little surprised that OOIDA is really behind this, Now, Todd Spencer, who is the president of that organization, he says serious problems with earlier rulemakings have left small business truckers justifiably wary of new emissions reduction proposals. Yeah, exactly what I was saying earlier. But he goes on and says, quote, however, over the last year, representatives of the EPA have gone to great lengths to fully understand how new policies may affect our members, which wasn't standard practice under previous administration. OOIDA believes the agency's desire to avoid the mistakes of the past is genuine. We're hopeful our ongoing conversations with the EPA and the feedback our members will soon provide during the upcoming comment period, which we'll talk about in a minute, will lead to the development of an acceptable new standard. Well, that's all fine and dandy. It's all lip speak. I don't understand. Well, he knows more than me. He's talking to these people directly, but it sounds like a lot of lip smacking to me. They're just, they don't really care how it affects the trucks. All they want is cleaner air. And I get that. I understand it, but I don't know. It's just, it's going to hurt the trucker. I just don't see how it won't. And I understand why Mr. Spencer wants to promote this and try to, get on their positive side and, say, hey, help us out here. But it usually ends up just backfiring us and shooting us right in the face. Let's hope I'm wrong about that. Wouldn't be the first time. All right, sticking with EPA issues, let's go over to fleetowner.com. John Hitch wrote this article called EPA Wants Public Input on New Emissions Rules. So basically, the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, they put out advance notice of proposed rulemaking, another acronym, of course, ANPR. Anyway, this is calling for public participation in drafting the Cleaner Trucks Initiative, which was first proposed in November of 2018. I don't remember this coming out, but apparently it was. Anyway, I'm not going to go into great detail on this one. I just wanted to let you know that if you wanted to make your comments about, how these EPA issues are affecting you and your business or your life, your life as a trucker, you can go over to this website and put your input in, just like we did about the hours of service a little bit ago. Same type of thing. These comments, it looks like, are only going to be available till February 20th, so you better jump right on that. I put a link in the show notes. It'll take you directly to the correct docket over on a regulations.gov website, and leave your thoughts over there. If you're interested in more about what this is all about and how they're planning on cutting emissions, whatever, so you can actually, know what you're talking about when you leave your comments. Again, go to fleetowner.com, check out the link in the show notes. So, hey, next up, how you doing with this new e-log system, with the new rules that went into effect where they're, using yard move and personal conveyance and all that good junk? Personally, my company has been having a lot of problems with it, and I don't know if it's software issue, if it's a hardware issue, but, it just does weird things. We'll be driving along and all of our countdown times and stuff, our drive times and times to our 8-hour break and, available 70 and all that stuff, it'll just go NA across the board, not applicable. It doesn't know what the heck's going on. You got to reboot the whole system. Sometimes it updates, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes we go back to paper logs. A coworker of mine was on paper logs 3 days of last week, 3 of the 6 days he was out. So, I'm hearing from others in the industry that it's pretty much trucking wide. People are having problems with this. I don't know what's exactly going on, but, anyway, just curious if you're having problems with, the ELDs and stuff. If you are, give me a shout and let me know about that at truckerdump@gmail.com. Anyway, this article is over here on overdriveonline.com from James Gillette and Todd Dills. This one is called A Gold Rush for ELD Data. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about this one, but if you are curious what is happening to all of this information that your electronic log is collecting, you might want to go over here. It does give some examples. Like some of these ELD manufacturers are using the data to, like, if they have a load board also, they will use that to help match freight with your location and things like that. But also, of course, insurance companies are getting into it. They said one driver reported that he got an average discount of $1,384 for a year. He got that as a discount just to be willing to share his data with Progressive Insurance. So they're using this data whether you like it or not. So if you don't want this data sold, make sure you go in and they're probably going to put this in the the boilerplate, can't remember what they call it, the EULA or whatever, the user license agreement, I think is what that stands for. It's, that thing that every new piece of software comes up and says, do you agree to this? And you don't read any of it and you click yes. Well, that's the EULA. And somewhere in there, you probably just gave them permission to download any data they want and sell it however they want. So if you're paranoid like that and you don't want that to happen, go over here to overdriveonline.com or click a link in the show notes and check out this article, see what it's all about. And if you don't like that, you might want to go back into your system and find out how to disable the ability for them to share your data. And if there is no option to not share it, you might want to choose a different ELD provider. And good luck with finding one that isn't planning on doing this in the future. Good times. All right, this next one, well, we're going to be discussing some women's issues coming up in the main topic. But if you are a lady truck driver, pay attention. there is a survey going on right now, and it is a series of questions that is trying to determine the prevalence of sexually harassing behaviors toward female drivers in the trucking industry. So you might remember a couple of podcasts ago, I mentioned that the FMCSA was getting ready to kind of do its own study towards this. But this is done by a Western Kentucky University student who just got her doctoral degree in nursing, and she is trying to get this survey done as part of her research project. And of course, I'm sure she will submit this to the FMCSA and help out with whatever, trying to figure out what the harassment issues are. And the reason she chose this, even though she was a nursing graduate, is that she used to be a trucker. Her name is Kim Bourne, and she went trucking with her husband for a while. And I guess when she got into the industry, she was harassed during her training, and she was also harassed afterwards, and this does not surprise me at all because, the evil overlord experienced some harassment when she was out there. I'm sure most of you ladies probably have experienced at one point or another. And why don't you let your voice be heard on this? Go over here to this link in the show notes here. And there'll be a link to the place or to the survey where you can go and leave your comments. We got to knock this off, guys. If you're sexually harassing women, and in my opinion, that includes flirting with them when it's unwarranted. And just because a woman talks to you does not mean she likes you and she wants you to flirt with them. Okay, just leave them alone. When I see a woman fueling, I make sure I don't even talk to her. I don't even look at her. I'm not trying to be rude or anything. It's just like, she's harassed enough. Leave her alone. Same goes with the cashiers. I say just enough to, just enough to be friendly, but I'm not flirting with them. I'm not standing around talking with them. They get enough of that as is. We've all heard the drivers up there standing up at the counter thinking he's really funny and really clever while the girl is laughing, but rolling her eyes, in her mind, she's rolling her eyes, and we all know she is. I hate to tell you, truckers, but if you're a 60-year-old trucker, that 20-year-old cashier has no interest in you whatsoever. Just letting you know in case you're clueless. So anyway, ladies, check out the link in the show notes to this overdriveonline.com article and go over there and take that survey and help this fellow lady out. All right, now here's an interesting one. Again, overdriveonline.com. Group seeks regulatory relief for deaf truckers. All right, now there is a organization called the National Association of the Deaf, and they are petitioning the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, or FMCSA, to remove the requirement for interstate truckers to be able to hear. The group also asks that FMCSA amend the requirement that drivers be able to speak and the rule prohibiting the use of interpreters during the CDL skills test. Yeah, I'm not really sure what I think about, removing those restrictions. Maybe you don't have to speak if you are, able to communicate in other ways, if you can write on a whiteboard or whatever. The use of the interpreter during the CDL test, I'm not sure about that. That's kind of like the one, where if you speak Spanish or whatever, you're allowed to use they're saying you're not allowed to use an interpreter. Yeah, I'm just really not sure about that one. But one thing I am sure of is that I don't see any problem with why a deaf person couldn't drive a truck. Now, I know some of you are probably thinking, well, Todd, you're a nut job, because how are they supposed to hear if somebody's honking at them or whatever? Well, these deaf people are driving cars already, right? I mean, so what's the difference? Yes, they are wielding a bigger weapon in a truck, but deaf people they have this superpower, from the way I hear it, because they are -1 sense, all the other ones are heightened. They're used to not hearing anything. And I can vouch, I've been a naughty boy. I've listened to earphones or my headphones with really loud music on, and I can't hear much of what's going on around me sometimes. And I can count on one hand, I can count on one finger how many times I've actually caused a problem, and like I didn't see or I didn't hear an ambulance that was behind me trying to get through. But I'm checking my mirrors, which of course a deaf person is going to be too. And as soon as I saw it, I got out of the way. There was maybe a 15-second delay. Hope that person didn't die. I would feel really bad about that. But, the fact is, I think deaf people can drive, and they have given exemptions for some deaf people, but again, they have to jump through all kinds of crazy hoops, and they're just trying to get the rules, more fair. And one really important thing that they're citing here is the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. They're saying this violates that act, that you can't discriminate against a deaf person. So it's going to be interesting to see how this goes. Personally, I hope they get the job, and I hope they are able to, get out here on the road. As far as communication and stuff like that, they might have a few extra issues. Like I don't know how they're going to understand, like if a cashier is asking for a number, like a truck number or whatever. But quite honestly, I'd be willing to bet that most people who are deaf, unless they are recently deaf, if they have been, like deaf all their lives, they probably are really good at reading lips. I think I mentioned before in the past that I have a nephew who has partial hearing, and sometimes if it's really loud in the environment, he can't really hear what you're saying, but he can read your lips pretty darn well. And I think that's pretty much a standard thing. So, if a shipper or receiver needs to talk to them or whatever, they can probably get by with that. Or like I said, worst case scenario, they hold up a whiteboard, that says, "Hey, I'm deaf," right on this board, So, anyway, I just hope this goes through. So if you're interested in that, check out this really, really short article over here on overdriveonline.com. Link in the show notes. All right. Sticking with the theme of healthcare, medical stuff, let's go to one of these awesome trucking law articles that I love so much over here on overdriveonline.com. Link in the show notes. This one is called "What Happens After a Stroke or Seizure?" So I don't know that you really need to know this until you have a stroke or a seizure, but if you're interested in this, you might want to go and check it out. There is a lot of little rules and guidelines on, like if you have a stroke, if you have permanent disabling effects such as a paralysis or severe weakness or vision loss, you won't be certifiable as a commercial truck driver. That makes sense. But otherwise, the majority of cases, you're going to be able to resume your career. It just depends on how long you have to wait, depending on the severity of your stroke and that kind of a thing, and how long you're going to have to wait. And then once you do get approved through a neurologist or a doctor, you are probably only going to get a card for a year instead of, the maximum 2 years you can get now. I'm talking about your DOT physical card here for those of you who don't know the trucking industry. So there's just a lot of different rules in here. And there's also for seizures, people who have seizures. Now, again, it used to be that if you had seizures of any kind, you were automatically disqualified, but they have changed that, because of some long-term anti-seizure medications and stuff like that. So it says here, to qualify to get your CDL, you must be seizure-free with or without medication for 8 consecutive years. And if you are taking medication, you must be on the same stable medication regimen for at least 2 years. And when you're talking about seizures, of course, you're going to talk about epilepsy too. So it says for epilepsy, a driver with a history of epilepsy may be qualified without a waiver if they're seizure-free and medication-free for 10 years. But if you just have a seizure of, whatever kind, for maybe you just have some kind of weird cold or a virus or something, it does happen, and you lose consciousness or have a small seizure, all you have to do is go get your doctor to sign off on this, that this was a one-time thing, and you will be able to get your CDL and get your DOT physical passed and all that stuff again. So anyway, if you've had a stroke or a seizure and you're wanting to get back into the trucking industry, you might want to check out this article. It's chock full of good information. Like I say, too much to go into here. Or if you think you might have a seizure or have strokes later on in life because you are really out of shape, and instead of doing something about it like exercising, you're pounding down another quarter pounder with cheese, then, maybe you want to check this out too for future reference. So anyway, link in the show notes to this one, and put down the quarter pounder and slowly walk away. All right. A couple of stories involving truckers and pain to end this up. This one is found on thetruckersreport.com. It's called Truckers Attacked by Security Guards Beats Assault Charge, Keeps Fighting Back. Now, you may remember this happened back in December of 18. That's quite a while ago. Story of a husband and wife who showed up at a shipper to pick up a load that they thought was food. This was Clinton and Shannon Kirker, and they showed up to pick up a load of produce from Metro Foods. But actually, I guess in the same warehouse is Metro Logistics or Metro Logics, which they do pharmaceuticals. Now, that's what they were actually there to pick up, but they didn't know it. So when they found out that they were going to, the guards were asking them to get out of the truck so they could inspect the vehicle and stuff like that. And he didn't understand what was going on, why they needed to inspect his vehicle to get inside and, to pick up a load of food. That just doesn't happen. So anyway, basically, when he found out what was going on, he just tried to leave. And you can see the video here. Check out the link in the show notes. And about the 5-minute mark is where it starts. I don't know why they ran this video for an hour, but there's like an hour of video on there. But it's just, it starts about the 5-minute mark. So you can just fast forward to there. But it just looks like he's just trying to leave. Clinton's just trying to leave, and the guard puts his hand up to block him. And that's when Clinton pushed the guy, which, can you blame him? He's trying to block him from leaving. So anyway, Clinton got charged for assault for allegedly pushing the guard, which according to the video, he did. But, it kind of looked like the guard the guard touched him first. There's no doubt in my mind about that. And kind of had him pinned up against the truck, and it didn't look good. So he fought back. I don't blame him. So anyway, before Kirker even got to court, they had downgraded the charge from assault to disorderly conduct interfering with a business. And he was found guilty of that charge in January of 2019. But when Kirker appealed it, the prosecutor offered to dismiss the charges against him. So he is in the clear on this. So that's really cool. He got out of this. And furthermore, he is, going after the Metro Foods and also the security company, which is Paragon Systems. And again, you really need to watch this video because talk about overkill. I mean, it was Clinton and his wife, Shannon, and they were both just put on the floor. Of course, she jumped in as soon as he got, that it escalated with her husband. She jumped in and they pinned her to the floor too. I mean, it's kind of funny actually, because it took 2 guys to get her down, which was pretty funny. But I mean, it's not really funny, but you get the idea. I'm chuckling after the fact. Good for you, Shannon. Way to whoop some butt. Anyway, I'm glad to see he got out of this charge. To me, looking at this video, I wasn't there, of course, but all the guy was doing was trying to leave because he did not approve of them going through his truck. He had every right to leave. He's clearly not inside the gate here in this video. So I don't understand why they wouldn't let him leave. To me, that ought to be the question that's going on here, in my opinion, is why wouldn't they let him leave? He's not even on private property yet, or I don't know, maybe the driveway is considered private property, but he's not in the lot yet. So what's it make any difference to them? If he didn't want to pick up the load, he shouldn't have to pick up the load. It's almost like they're saying you have to stay here and pick up this load. No, you don't. He's an owner operator. He didn't have to do squat. So anyway, good for you, Clinton and Shannon Kirker, for getting out of this. And I hope your black eye is healed. There's a picture in this link, and man, that looks painful. And he was bruised, bloodied, and battered by the time they got done with him and had him down on the ground. You can see it even from a distance, blood coming off his face. Anyway, man, what a mess. In my opinion, those security guards just really overstepped their bounds. So, but I mentioned 2 truckers in pain, right? Oh boy, this next one, I don't even know what to think about this one. This is also on thetruckersreport.com. Trucker gives birth in truck stop bathroom. Yes, you heard that right. This article calls the baby the world's youngest over-the-road trucker was born last week. This happened in upstate New York, and apparently truck stop employees came up to the manager and said, there is a woman giving birth in the bathroom, and he thought they were joking. Only did, he finally hear a woman screaming that they went and investigated and found out that, guess what? That woman had a baby girl right there on the bathroom floor. So, well, I assume in the bathroom floor, maybe on the toilet. I don't know. Either way, it's gross. No one trucking bathrooms, truck stop bathrooms. It's like, boy, I would not want to have a baby there. But, my first thought was, what's she doing out on the road if she's got a baby due? Well, apparently she was only at 8 months, so she was a bit early. Maybe she was planning on taking off a bit early. All they know is the mother's name was Chris. They still don't have the father's name. He was there. It was a husband-wife team. I don't know where he was during all this. Anyway, all I can think is that I hope that hospital gave that baby a good check because, ew. And I'm also thinking, I hope whoever cleaned up that bathroom after this was over got a big raise. Because talk about going above and beyond. I mean, can you imagine scooping up placenta in a dustpan? That's not right. All right, we are done with the news. Let's say we move on to some trucker grub.
Give us a bottle of your finest champagne, 5 shrimp cocktails, and some bread for my brother.
What's that?
Sushi.
Sushi?
Boy, some chicken wings have really hit the spot.
This is a tasty burger.
Don't play with your food, eat it.
I'm thinking I might be a bit hard on my friend driver Chris Mack. I pick on him quite a bit and razz him about different habits that he has and different things that he does. And yet every time I ask him to come through with the trucker grub, he comes through. Maybe I should lighten up on him a bit. Nah. Take it away, Chris.
Hey, trucker dumpers, driver Chris Mack here again for another truck grub segment. I haven't done one of these in a while. I've been slacking. But when I spoke to Todd the other morning, he said that I needed one by Sunday when he got home so he could put the podcast together. So I decided I would do all of us a favor by submitting my truck grub so we don't have to listen to Fred again. I found this one quite by accident the week after Christmas when I was coming back from Washington State. I stopped at a Stay-Mart truck stop in Bismarck, North Dakota. That's I-94, exit 161, which I was told has recently been bought out by Pilot. So I assume it's going to become a Flying J, but that remains to be seen. But they did tell me the Marlin's Family Restaurant and the Cheap Shots Bar and Grill that are both located there were going to stay open. Hopefully that will happen. I ended up spending 2 days and 3 nights there because they closed I-94 due to winter weather. That parking lot was a mess. But anyway, I spent Sunday there on the last week of the regular season in football. Of course, I was watching all the games. I had beer and cheese sticks and cheese curds and wings, and at night they have specials on their burgers, some as low as $2, but you can only get that in the bar. You can't get the specials if you're in the restaurant. As far as the restaurant goes, they have a full menu and buffet. I only had breakfast there, so I can't really speak for the rest of the food, but what I had was good. So if you find yourself in Bismarck and don't want to park at Pedro, go on down to exit 161 and stop at the Stay Mart. I would highly recommend it.
Well, what could I possibly add to that? Beer, cheese sticks, chicken wings. What more does a driver need, right? You know, I have been to this truck stop out there at the Stay Mart, and I've been there before. I have never eaten in those restaurants, which probably doesn't surprise you because, you know, I am a cheapskate, and more than likely, I probably had a can of soup that night. Anyway, if Chris says the food is good, I'm going to take his word for it because he loves food and he loves to eat, which, well, honestly, you couldn't tell because he's so dang skinny that he could use a crazy straw as a water slide. Just saying. Hey, I'd like to jump in here for a minute and remind you that Volvo Trucks is our sponsor. Check them out at volvotrucks.us. Today, I'd like to remind you of a cool new feature on the Volvos. It's called Volvo Dynamic Steering, and it's designed to make your job easier by reducing strain on your back, your neck, your arms, and your shoulders because, you know, steering does take effort. Volvo Dynamic Steering compensates for side winds, removes road vibrations, makes backing simpler, and it has an automatic return to center feature, which is pretty cool. But today I'd like to feature blowout assistance. Just do me a favor on this one. Check out the link in the show notes and go over to YouTube and watch this video on the blowout assistance. Basically, they simulate a blowout. What I really want you to pay attention to is the shot from the interior when it's pointing at the driver when he's got the helmet on. And when that tire blows, you can see the truck drop, but his arms hardly move at all. Now, if you've ever had a blowout on a steer tire, you know how jarring it can be. But this guy's like, whatever, blowout, no big deal. I mean, it's really cool the way this system monitors your steering like 2,000 times a second and just helps you out with the things that will really help you to be a safer driver out on the road. So again, go check out this video. It's real short, like a minute long, and just see how fascinating this is. And hey, while you're there, you might as well go ahead and watch all the other cool videos on Volvo Dynamic Steering. It's like nothing you've ever seen or driven. Volvo Dynamic Steering. Enjoy driving again. Learn more at volvotrucks.us or check out their YouTube channel. I'll put a link to both in the show notes. And thanks again to Volvo Trucks for sponsoring this episode of Trucker Dump and for making really cool trucks with really cool features like Volvo Dynamic Steering. All right, let's get on with today's main topic, which is an interview. By the way, I'm figuring out I really have a lot of fun doing interviews, and this was a great one. Ellen was a great guest, but we'll introduce her in just a second and get on with it. You know, I would like to say, though, that women truckers often get totally left out of the conversation whatsoever. They just aren't talked about that much. Well, the Women in Trucking Association is trying to do something about that. Now, again, I'd like to point out that this interview is not just for women. Dudes, you need to stick around and listen to this. I think you'll enjoy it. It's a really fun interview. We had a good time, and there's some really good information in here. So, let's just get on with it, shall we? All right, today on the show, we've got Ellen Voie. She is the president, CEO, and founder of the Women in Trucking Association. Welcome to the show, Ellen.
Well, thanks for having me, Todd.
First question, did you ever think you'd be on any sort of broadcast that had the word dump in it?
Actually, that's a great question. No, I didn't.
Yeah, I can imagine. You think, yeah, trucker, maybe, not dump though.
True.
Okay, so you are the bigwig at the Women in Trucking Association. So, for everybody who hasn't heard of this, what does the Women in Trucking Association do?
Well, we're a nonprofit organization, and we're like a trade professional type organization. So we are here to represent our members, but our mission is pretty simple. It's to increase the percentage of women employed in the trucking industry. So we address obstacles that might keep women from entering the industry or succeeding in the industry. We celebrate success of our members. We have some recognition programs, and we encourage the employment of women in the trucking industry. And that means women as technicians, as drivers, management, everyone, even to the board level. So it's all women in the industry that we represent. But I have to tell you, about 17% of our members are men. because they believe in our mission. So I like to tell people we're not for women as much as we're about women.
Right. Yeah. I had somebody mention to me that the women in trucking, they said, women in trucking, why do they need a group all their own? And I thought, well, for one thing, they have a lot of male members, so it's not like an exclusive girls only club, and also because, well, women are way underrepresented in this industry, how that goes. So,
well, that's what I tell people when they ask. I'll say, well, if you're happy and with the small percentage of women employed in the industry, then don't join. But we want to change that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what is the percentage?
Well, we did a survey with FreightWaves. They're a big data organization, and it's about 10% of the driving population, which I can tell you 13 years ago, it was more like 3%.
Yeah, I thought the last stat I had heard was something around 7. So it is going up slowly. It's just really slowly, it sounds like.
Not fast enough for us.
Yeah. So why do you think that percentage is so low?
Well, as in any traditionally male-dominated environment like mining, construction, trucking, it's that women don't picture themselves in the career. So that's our biggest hurdle. We have to talk to women and say, hey, have you ever thought about driving a truck? Have you ever thought about being a safety director? Have you ever thought about, being a diesel maintenance technician? And my typical reaction is, no, I can't do that. And my response to them is, you know what, you can. And you can make really good money in this industry, male or female. And actually, as drivers, you're making the exact same amount of money, as your coworkers, because you're not paid, there's no gender disparity. You're paid either by the mile or by the load or by the percentage or hour or whatever, but they don't say, well, women get paid less. So in this industry, you can make as much as your other coworkers. So our big job is to tell women that, yes, you can do this job. And yes, you'd be valued, and we're going to help you. Yeah.
I've mentioned that same thing about that pay gap. It just doesn't exist in the trucking industry. You get paid on your experience. It doesn't matter whether you're boy, girl, or in between,
That's true. And that is true. And that's the best thing about it. There's not a pay gap in trucking.
Yeah, not at all. Now, I noticed you used a word a minute ago. You said women say, I can't do that job. Mm-hmm. Is it really that they really don't think they can, or they just don't want to?
I think it's that they don't understand the job. Yeah. So let's talk about being a driver. Women would say, well, I'm not mechanically minded. Well, actually, Todd, do you fix your truck? No.
I have said numerous times on this podcast that I am so awful at mechanical stuff that if just a doorknob needs to be changed around the house, the evil overlord, that's my wife. That's my nickname for her. She's like, let's call a handyman. She didn't want me to screw things up, So I don't fix my own truck. I mean,
so women will tell me I'm not mechanically minded, or they'll tell me I can't learn how to shift. And my response to them is, yes, you can. Or they'll tell me I'd never be able to back a tractor trailer, and I'd say, we can teach you. Or they'll say, I'm not big and burly. Guess what? You don't have to be big and burly anymore because it's a lot less physically demanding. So it's the misperception. And then as for technicians, wow, it's not the old, turning wrenches on a big diesel engine anymore. There's so much technology on that vehicle. And actually, women have smaller hands typically, and so they can get in and around a diesel engine better than men can, if they have smaller hands. And so that actually makes them better suited in some situations. So our job is to say, you can do it. And you have a misperception of the industry. And that's why we have an image team. We have an image team that goes out and talks to people, gets in front of, schools. And we actually have a Girl Scout transportation patch because we want to tell girls and women, there are career opportunities for you in the trucking industry. And here's what they are.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of what you're doing reminds me, at least with the youth, of that STEM program, how they're promoting among women, science, technology, and all this stuff that they haven't really thought about in the past. They're more interested in other kinds of careers, not these real technical based ones, kind of reminds me of that.
And you're right. There's data out there that shows, I think it was Hewlett Packard that did this data, and they said women will apply for a job when they have 100% of the qualifications, or they'll apply for career advancement. Men will apply when they have 60% of the qualifications. So if you think about a driver, so a guy will say, drive a tractor trailer. Well, I don't know how to shift a 13 speed, but you're going to teach me, right? Where a woman will say, well, I don't know how to drive a 13 speed, so I can't do the job. And we need to get beyond that and say, we're going to teach you. You don't need to check off all the boxes ahead of time.
Yeah, I guess it just takes badgering, basically. I remember when the Evil Overlord and I got into the industry, she was the same way. I was trying to convince her to get into trucking, and she just said, I can't back that truck. I don't think I can. Well, I finally I wore her down, basically, but by the time we got to trucking school, within the first little bit, she was actually helping some of the guys back in. She picked it up faster than they did. So it's just a matter of her getting in there and doing it, and you talking about size, women are worried about not having enough strength or whatever. There's a lot of little bitty tiny dudes out here doing this job,
True. Yeah.
There really
exactly.
is.
And it's not just gender. I mean, talk about older people who maybe don't have the lifting strength as well. There are some career professions, maybe if you're hauling rigging or flatbeds or cars. I mean, there is a physical component, but for a lot of the jobs these days, you're not in the back of that trailer. They hire someone else to do that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And even with some of the, not really mechanical stuff, but just things you have to do on a daily basis to a truck, like sliding tandems or something like that. You see guys out there all the time that have jammed up trailers and they can't get them moved. And another guy, it just happened to me last week. I couldn't get them moved, and I had to have another driver come over and he helped me, if you're willing to ask. But maybe that's a problem with the women also, is they feel like they can't go up and ask a guy, because then the guy's going to be like, oh, look at the little lady, can't handle herself. You think that's part of it?
That could be part of it. But also there's a lot of technology out there. I mean, you've got automatic dolly crankers. I mean, there's a lot of technology out there that will help in that process. So if a company wants to make it less physically demanding, there's things that they can put on the truck to do that.
Yeah. Like I can't remember where I read it, but some manufacturer was actually planning their driver seats around women.
Oh, that was us. We went and worked with Peterbilt, and it wasn't necessarily just the seats. We've actually worked with Volvo, Freightliner, and Peterbilt on sending drivers in and having them, sit in the trucks, sit in the seats. And so they've done a lot of work on lowering the hood and making it adaptable, not necessarily building a truck for women, but making sure that women don't have to sit on pillows and again, back to your point, there are small statured men as well. So this isn't necessarily about women as much as it's making sure that the truck is adaptable so that women are as comfortable. I mean, one of my friends, she's like, I don't know, 5'1", and her husband is like 6'3", and they teen.
Yeah.
So, the truck has to be adaptable so that she can see over the hood and reach the pedals as well as he can. And that's what our goal is.
So that's something that the truck manufacturers can do. What do you think carriers can do to attract more women drivers?
Well, first of all, they need to kind of look at the recruiting materials and say, are we even inclusive? I mean, you would not believe some of the recruiting ads that I've seen. One of them says, we're looking for a few good mustaches. I mean, how many women are going to respond to that ad? And
right.
So the recruiting materials, and then where are you recruiting? Are you recruiting in places where there might be potential female drivers? And here's a tip, Todd. And we have a recruiting guide, and this tip is in there. After listening to a bunch of female drivers talk about their motorcycles, I went on our Facebook page, and there's about 11,000, mostly female drivers on our Facebook page. And I asked how many had a motorcycle or a motorcycle license. 80%.
Wow.
So think about the type of woman you're trying to attract. She's already comfortable in a male-dominant environment. She doesn't mind a little bit of risky behavior riding a motorcycle. Not that that's that risky, but, and also she doesn't mind the environment. Hardly. Those are all, typically in the past there was guys. So think about the type of woman that you want to attract into the trucking industry, that's where to go. And then as far as carriers, we have an anti-harassment employment guide that we can provide so that if they have training situations, we also have them look at the environment, like, do you have restroom parity? Do you have the men's restroom in the, with a shower, and the women don't have a shower, things like that, because the terminals were built so many years ago. And then uniforms, like, do you have uniforms that fit women? I can't tell you how many companies expect their female drivers to wear the men's shirts, and then they'll give out big buckles for safe driving awards, things like that. So it's really, you know what I'm saying? It's like,
right.
You have
Yeah.
to, and it's always like, well, we've always done it that way. Well, okay, but it takes someone from outside, or I always tell companies, talk to your female drivers and ask what you could do to make their jobs, better. Talk to the male drivers too, but if you're focusing on hiring female drivers, then talk to the ones you have and say, what can we be doing better?
Yeah. I've got there's a lady named, Gwen in our Trucker Dump Slack group, and she was showing us, she just got out of one of those, entry level jobs, in trucking, and was eager to get away from that. And she wanted to be a flatbedder. And so she goes to this flatbed company, and it's the first woman they've ever hired. So what did they do? They gave her bright pink load straps, all of them. And she was like, well, she liked it. That's the thing. She was like, yeah, it's just like, I was like, well, that's really cool, cause she wants to be loud and proud and say, hey, I'm a woman driving this flatbed, I don't know if they offered those to her or they just gave them to her and said, this is your only option. Cause that would be bad.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Cause then
no one's going to steal them. They'll know they're hers.
That's a very good point. There ain't no dude going to steal those. No. But, it's little things like that. Yeah, I think they could do better. I'm glad I am not a recruiter trying to recruit women into this industry. It just seems like they've really got their hands full just to convince them, that they can do the job. You can tell somebody they can do the job all day long, but, I guess that's probably, isn't that kind of what you have, an ambassador program or something like that, don't you?
We're just starting that. Yeah, we're starting our driver ambassador. I'm so excited. Kelly Lynn she's a Schneider driver, and we were looking for a driver ambassador, and she came to us, and she works 2 weeks out of the month at Schneider. She works every other week. And she said, I would like to be your driver ambassador, and I would commit 1 week out of the month. And so Schneider actually branded a tractor for her, and Walmart gave us a trailer that we're going to be retrofitting. We're going to be putting a hands-on, maybe a simulator, but like the history of women in the industry, the history of women in trucking, what skills are needed. So it'll be a mobile display, and I'm so excited about it. We're still in the planning stages. We haven't cut the trailer apart yet, but we will. Yeah.
Well, it seems like the more that those ambassadors get out there and spread the word too, then other non-trucking women will look at that and go, hey, that lady's doing it, and she seems really happy. Look how happy she is, maybe I can do it.
I had one of our image team members was on the Megyn Kelly show shortly before it ended, and it was Driver Appreciation Week. And she was our driver, Deb, was talking about how much she loves the job, and she drives team with her husband. And she goes, I get to see the most beautiful sunrises, and our phones just lit up like crazy, because she said, she was from women, she's with women in trucking.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So our phones just lit up. All these women were calling and emailing and saying, I never thought I could, I never thought about being a truck driver, but the way she described it was awesome. So one of our goals with our image team is to get them out in the non-trucking public. We had a driver in Oprah magazine. We had a driver on the Ricky Lake show a few years ago. We had a driver on Dr. Oz. So we try to get them in places where people might not think about the trucking industry. And that's, And so, and media interviews. We just had a driver featured in the Wall Street Journal a couple months ago. And that's what we really need to do. This industry needs to do that and talk about, how cool these jobs are, and get out to, instead of stealing drivers from other companies in the industry, we need to go outside the industry and say, hey, we have opportunities here.
Yeah. There's only so many dude truckers, out there. And there's so many. It's like when carriers started deciding they were going to go after, military and older people, like even retirement age. And it's like there's this whole vast group out there that they were just ignoring for so many years. It's, they really need to concentrate on these women, because I just saw a stat the other day that shows that women are actually safer drivers than men.
Yes. And I was so excited when the American Transportation Research Institute came out with that. Women are significantly safer. Men were 20% more likely to have a crash in every statistically significant situation. So whether it's at night, on a curve, at intersections, women are safer drivers, and it's amazing. But the other thing that we found, and I hear this anecdotally, I can't quantify it, but women are typically better with customers, better with equipment, better with paperwork, I'm told. And so if you think about it, who do you want your truck? I mean, women take fewer risks. And that's just because of the way we're wired, testosterone versus, estrogen. So,
yeah.
I mean, who do you want in your truck? Someone who takes fewer risks, right?
Yeah, for sure. And as far as that whole taking care of the truck and stuff, I totally believe that. I mean, the company I'm with now, we slip seat, and for you non-truckers out there, slip seating means you are in and out of a lot of different trucks. And let me tell you, guys don't usually take care of their trucks very well. They're often very nasty in there. And you're like, what kind of pig was in this truck last? Good God. But yeah, like you said, they're also way less likely to take a risk. They're more likely to get off the road when weather hits, or go slower when it's raining and that kind of thing. I know from experience, my wife teamed with me for 9 years. So I got to watch her firsthand. She picked up shifting faster than I did. So it's not a very manly thing to say, but she did. And she was a much more cautious driver than I was. And our accident records prove that. So
there you go.
Yep. So that would help, if a carrier started realizing that. I don't know why they don't already realize that. I think honestly, if most guys admitted it, they would already say that. They know that women drivers are probably way safer than they are, even without any studies being done.
And thank you for saying that, because we have to use data to prove it, because I can't stand up in front of people and say women are safer drivers without data. But the data has proven it. There's another interesting study that the American Transportation Research Institute did, and they found that women were also something like 80% more likely to be detained 6 hours or more at a loading dock. And that was very disturbing.
Yeah. Well, do you think that is because they're disparaging women, or because they just enjoy talking to them?
Well, according to the female drivers that I talked to, it's not because they're women. It's because you guys are like, come on, I got to get loaded.
Oh, we're forceful, and they're not.
Yeah. And so you're like, hey,
right.
Come on, I got 2 more stops to make, where the women are like, oh, well, I guess they'll get to me when they get to me. So our response to, and I'm not saying every woman is like that. Believe me, not at all. But the study showed that women were more likely to be detained. And so our response is to these female drivers, hey, go up to the loading dock and say, hey, I got 3 more stops today. Can you tell me when you expect to get me unloaded? And it's not being disrespectful, but next time you're delivering somewhere, watch how the guys are, up there asking, hey, when am I getting unloaded? And being a little bit more confrontational about it than the women.
Yeah. Yeah. Being upfront about what you want out of them, but being nice about it. Cause I love nothing more as a male driver waiting on my load to be loaded. Love nothing more than when another driver comes in yelling and screaming at them, because now I know I just bumped myself up in line a little bit,
And when someone else is yelling and screaming, is it typically a guy or is it a woman?
Oh, it's a dude. Always a dude.
There you go.
Yeah. I mentioned about guys on the dock talking to the women, because that actually happened to us. When we started, I was like 27. My wife was like 25, something like that. And she was, young, attractive. And when she would go in on the dock, it always took way longer for us to get loaded. And I couldn't figure it out. And my wife said, well, it's because they're standing there talking to me instead of loading the dang truck.
That's true.
And so we actually got to the situation where when we got to a shipper or receiver, she would just wake me up and I'd go in. So, she never even had to mess with anybody.
That's funny.
Yeah. Well, speaking of looks and women, sexual harassment, it's still an issue, unfortunately, right?
Correct. It is. Yeah.
And that's probably starts, don't you think, in the training programs? There's been lots of issues about that.
I think it's more the individual's values. There are wonderful men, and let's talk drivers. There are so many wonderful men who have respect for their moms, their aunts, their grandmas, their sisters, and all the women out there. And then there's others who don't treat women with respect. And it's evidenced in the way they treat women out on the road. And I hear such horror stories from women about things that, male coworkers have said to them. But then there's other women who have nothing but good things to say about the guys around them. So I don't know if it's training, but I will tell you one thing, Todd. One of the trucking companies that's a member of Women in Trucking has their drivers watch a movie called North Country with Charlize Theron. Have you ever seen that?
No, I have not.
So it's a movie where she gets a job working in a mine, and they do everything possible to make her quit. They dump over the porta potty when she's in it. They put things in her lunchbox. They are just horrible to her because they don't want her in their environment. So this trucking company has their trainers sit down, watch this movie, and then they talk about it. And they say, do women have a right to be in this industry? Absolutely. Are they just playing where men are trying to make a living? Absolutely not. And it's having, that conversation in advance saying there is a zero tolerance here for anyone who doesn't treat women with respect. And the company better walk the walk and not just talk the talk. So it's really company culture, and it's really about respect.
Yeah, man, call me a pig if you like, but, I wouldn't mind watching one of the,
Charlize Theron.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind watching a movie in orientation if she was in it.
Well,
just saying.
I'm sure you can get it on Amazon Prime or something, but it is a good movie.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a neat idea. It's a neat approach, though. Yeah. Well, I remember, like you said, there are a lot of guys who do respect women drivers out here, but that is the crux of it. Really, is that a lot of there are still plenty who don't. When the Evil Overlord and I started, I was actually having to wait on a woman trainer, and she had to go with a guy for about a week. Well, she didn't have to. They said she could wait, but she wanted to finish the same time as me, so she just said, well, I'll go with the guy for a week and then I'll go over to the woman. And she actually had a better time with the guy than she did the woman, because the guy was an elderly guy. He was very respectful. She got no creepy feelings off him whatsoever. No advances, anything like that. He was just a really nice guy. And then she went over to the woman, and the woman copped attitude on her, so yeah, it was like a total reversal of what we expected, so it all, like you said, it all has to do with how we treat these women. And I think we really need to talk to, like the listeners who are listening right now. If you're a dude and you're not respecting women the way you should, you're not treating them as equals, that's a big problem, and you need to knock it off. That's right. That's just all there is to it.
And the rest of you guys, if you hear someone on the CB, if they're using the CB or at the truck stop or whatever, disrespecting women, call them out on it, and just defend the woman. And I hear way too many stories. In fact, I actually had some guy called, and he was just like yelling at me. He said women are the worst drivers on the road, and he just went on and on. But he left the message like at 7:00 on a Saturday morning, so I don't think he really wanted to tell me.
Right.
But I've gotten emails from men who say that women really shouldn't be driving trucks. And I've stood at trade shows and had men walk up to me and say, women cannot drive. They should not be driving. And you know what my response to them is? Please step out of my booth, because I can't argue with stupidity.
No, you really can't. You can't have a battle of wits with somebody who doesn't have any.
That's true.
Yeah.
But there are still, and the problem is that those voices seem to be so loud. I mean, they could be with 99 male drivers in one day and, or let's say a week, and every one of them treats women with respect, but then one guy, is very derogatory. That's the one that sticks out in your head. So that's unfortunate. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Another thing, when I look at my current company and I drive for an LTL company, and I think one of the differences in, maybe one thing that women could look at is the type of trucking company that they're going to work for. For instance, I work for an LTL company now, and we see the same women all the time. We're in drivers' rooms all the time. We run into the same women. And so I've never seen one disrespected there. I've never seen them flirted with or, gawked at or anything. They're just another driver sitting there. And, whereas that's because that guy is going to eventually have to face her again,
Well, that's a good point. Yeah.
But if they're over the road, they could walk up and say whatever they want to a woman standing in a truck stop or fueling a truck and walk off, and they're never, ever going to see him again. So there's no consequence whatsoever.
Right. That's a good point, Todd. You're right. If you have to, once you have to work with someone, hopefully you're going to be a little bit more respectful. The other thing that like I told you earlier, we have an anti-harassment employment guide. In the anti-harassment guide, there's an expectations exchange. So let's say when your wife was going out with her trainer, a male trainer or female trainer, it's gender neutral. You sit down and you set the boundaries. So you say, hey, are you conservative, liberal? Can we discuss politics? If not, it's off the table. Your religious, convictions. Can we discuss religion? If not, it's off the table. And you set the boundaries in advance and say, these are things that we will not be discussing. And also, if someone tells a joke and you find that joke offensive, you have to say something and say, hey, please don't use that term in front of me, or please don't, I don't appreciate that joke. You have to speak up and tell them, because if you don't, and they think that you thought it was funny, they're going to tell those kind of jokes again. So, we have a responsibility to set boundaries.
That's really neat. I've mentioned that before, as far as just the sexual aspect of it. Like I've told people on the podcast before, or, listeners who write in asking questions about this, and I'll say, you got to lay the groundwork on that right in the beginning. And the first time they flirt with you or whatever, you just need to say, hey, I'm not interested. I'm here to do the job, and get that right out on the table. But I never really thought about all the other aspects, like you say, religion and politics and, bad language or, do you like bad language? Or are you fine with it? Whatever. Get all that stuff out of the way right at the beginning. That's a really neat idea. And that would definitely cause less, arguments and strain and just general tension in the truck, I would think.
Well, yeah. And if you tell someone, well, I have food allergies, please don't eat this food around me, or, just setting it up in advance so the person knows what your boundaries are. And as long as they respect them, especially in a training situation, you're only going to be with them a few weeks. So just respect it. Don't eat peanuts for 3 weeks.
Yeah. How hard is it? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's like, dude, can you not flirt with a girl for just that amount of time,
Right.
Yeah. This lady I was talking about earlier, this Gwen, she said, in her training groups, actually, I think when she was actually talking about it, it was one of these companies that kind of like forces a brand new person to train somebody else. I hate that. Yeah. I hate that program, but yeah, she actually had like guys like rubbing up against her and stuff like that accidentally, and it's that kind of crap. When that kind of stuff happens, that's when the carriers need to stand up, and they don't too often. They're just like, I'm sure he didn't mean it that way or whatever. No, he meant it that way.
See, and that's just it. That they have to have zero tolerance and they have to enforce it.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember a long time back, CRST got into some trouble with this. And I was like, this was quite a ways back, but all I could think was that this was happening with multiple trainers. And I just couldn't imagine how so many different trainers were doing this without getting in trouble. I could see like a one-off jerk doing this and getting away with it, but it was like a whole bunch of them. And it was almost like it just the environment they were in. They were allowed to do it, so they did it.
Yeah, they need to. You really have to set the policy in advance and enforce it. Because if you don't enforce it, then people start taking advantage of or abusing the policy.
Yeah, and for the record, I don't know if CRST. I'm sure they really watch that stuff now after getting in trouble. So everybody don't be mad at CRST.
True.
Right. You mentioned earlier about teaming in trucking. Is that how most women get their start in trucking, do you think? Or do you have any stats on that or anything?
I do, Todd.
Ooh, of course you do.
We do a lot of research. Yeah. 83% of women who come into this industry come in because of a family member or friend. And that's typically a husband, a boyfriend, a dad, a brother, somebody who says, hey, the kids are grown. Okay. So again, the average age of a female driver is around 50. Her children are grown, and somebody has said, get your CDL and come out on the road with me. And that's how so many women get in that way. I hear that over and over and over again. Not everyone, but so many. So yeah, it's because of someone else. So they come in and they typically are teaming at first. Doesn't mean they'll stay as a team, but it's also safer. And it's also a better learning environment for some women if they can get their miles under their belt, with someone who has more experience. So it doesn't mean they're always staying as a team, but that's how they typically come in.
Yeah, that's the way the evil overlord was. She was like, I'll do this as long as we're together, but if we, I'm never going to do this solo. And she even says today, she likes my new company. And she said, I'd go to work for them if they would just run us the same direction all the time. And you could, be there every time we dropped and hooked and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, it's not like she wouldn't do her own drop and hooks. It's just that, she would want to, just me to be there all the time. She just feels safer about the whole thing. So I totally get that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there is a safety issue out here. I've heard, I've heard lots of women will come up with creative bathroom situations in their trucks just so they don't have to, walk through a dark parking lot at night. And that is something that I don't think a lot of guys think about. They just get out and walk across the parking lot. It's no big deal. If they bother to walk across a parking lot at all, I should say. Usually they're just stepping behind the vehicle.
Well, I will tell you that women are typically more situationally aware of their surroundings, especially at a truck stop and especially at night. So, right. I hear from women over and over again, they don't park in the back. They don't walk between trucks. They'll have someone else with them, or they're more situationally aware, because women are more vulnerable.
Yeah, for sure. My wife would always, if she needed a rest area late at night or whatever, she'd just say, get up, you're walking me in. And I was like, well, I'd rather be woke up than be the subject of a murder investigation later on, so.
That's true.
All right. Going back just briefly to, women just in general getting jobs in the trucking industry. There has been some new regulation that is it already in effect or is it going into effect? What's the name of it? And can you give us some insight on that?
Sure. It has been introduced. So Senator Moran in Kansas, he actually was part of a group that introduced a similar bill in aviation to get more female pilots. So they approached us and said, we want to introduce this act. It's Women's Workforce Development. But what it will do, it will create an advisory committee at the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration to figure out how to bring more women in the industry. And since we're already doing that, it made me very happy to think that, wow, now I'm going to have a few other people who can help me brainstorm. So they'll have different associations and groups represented on the advisory committee. But also, so Senator Moran is from Kansas, and he's a Republican, so they needed a Democrat to co-sponsor the bill. So we approached our Senator Tammy Baldwin from Wisconsin, and she agreed to co-sponsor the Senate version. And then for the House version, Congressman Gallagher introduced that. We've given him a ride in a truck as well, and we hope to give Tammy Baldwin a ride along with one of our image team members. So basically, all the bill says is an advisory committee needs to be created at the FMCSA. And I talked to Administrator Martinez when the introduction of this bill was announced. And I said, do you have a problem with that? I mean, is that okay with you? And he said, he kind of shrugged. He goes, sometimes that's how you get things done. So it wasn't, the FMCSA wasn't against it. They said, no, we're good with it. We know that we need to get more women in this industry. And so it's good to go. Now, the problem is getting it introduced, and it will have to go in a transportation bill. And we all know that they're not doing anything in Washington right now.
Yeah. Yeah. They're a little distracted, unfortunately.
Yeah. So, but no one sees any reason why it wouldn't be passed, because who's going to say, no, we don't need more women in trucking?
Yeah, that would not be good. That wouldn't be good for their voting, for their voters. Like, we want to look good. We want to look women friendly. The thing about this legislation, or this, this regulation that they're trying to get in effect, I reported on this at the last podcast, and my thoughts on it were, okay, great. We need something to promote this, but overall, it's sad that we have to get legislation to get this done. It ought to just be happening, And
I totally agree. But I will tell you that under Secretary LaHood, a number of years ago, when Secretary LaHood was Secretary of Transportation, he was so proactive. It would not have needed to have been introduced under his watch, because he was so proactive. He was inviting me to Washington constantly. We would do a women in transportation roundtable, and we'd invite rail, maritime, pipeline, aviation, all women in transportation careers. And we would talk about the challenges we all face. And then he would have me come in for a group, maybe with education and labor and transportation, trying to brainstorm, how are we going to provide skills for young people to come into transportation careers? Because if you think about it, every one of the careers needs an operator. They need diesel technicians. They need some type of a dispatcher or air traffic controllers and things like that. So all the modes of transportation have similar pain points. So why shouldn't we work together? And under Secretary LaHood, we were doing that all the time. So I agree with you. It's sad that we need legislation to do that, but I think sometimes that's what maybe will make the needle move.
Yeah. Well, and when you say, your organization is Women in Trucking, and I think so many times people just think of that as, we got to get more female truck drivers. And it's like you said, it's way beyond that. There's, I can't remember some stat I heard, I can't remember, like 7 out of 10 people in the United States are associated with the transportation industry, and where they work. And it's like, I don't think it was that high, but it was some crazy amount like that, and so there are plenty of other jobs that these people can do. I've had my 2 favorite dispatchers. I've been driving for 22 years. My 2 favorite dispatchers I've ever had, both women.
Awesome. And there's a lot more women dispatching, and more women in management, more women starting trucking companies, a lot more. Still need more, but I'm surprised at how many women are in dispatching, because in the past it wasn't always that way. And someone kind of said it like this, and I don't know how old you are, Todd, but many, many years ago, women didn't drive school buses. Okay. Mm-hmm. You just saw men driving school buses.
Right.
And now female school bus drivers, nobody blinks at all. No. I mean, it's just normal. And so when we get to that point, when a woman hops out of a tractor trailer and nobody, thinks that it's unusual, that's when we'll have hit success for the driving population.
Yeah. I wish we could maybe pattern everything about after the bus drivers, because I'd be willing to bet that there's a higher percentage of female bus drivers than there are over-the-road drivers.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I would think so, but
I mean, well, because they're home every day, maybe they can do it before school and after school, and it doesn't affect, their home for their kids and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but that's for school buses. But think about tour buses. They're gone for, could be a week or 2.
Right. Also with the bus industry in general is that these bus drivers are not spending nights at a truck stop.
That's true.
They're in a hotel, things like that. Yeah. That's the thing with like the LTL that I work for. We don't spend the night in truck stops now. So, I was talking to one young lady. She's 22. She just started working at this company. She's an attractive young lady. And, I said, what's what's going on? Why would you start here, and why would you start at this company? Why would you start in trucking at all? Honestly, I just was curious, and then I said, well, and why at this company? And she said, well, because you guys stay in a hotel every night and I don't have to mess with the truck stops. So, she feels far more secure getting out at our terminal, leaving her truck, getting on a shuttle van, going to the hotel and coming back, and maybe she never even leaves her hotel room while she's there. So she feels a lot safer doing that. So again, I think it's just the type of jobs. Maybe they ought to start looking at different types of trucking jobs, not just, thinking they have to go over the road and be out in, parking somewhere in the middle of the desert at night, all by themselves or something.
Well, I talk about that all the time when I give presentations. I'll ask women, have you ever thought about hauling trash? Put your kids on the bus, go out, and around here, the guy sits in the truck. I've never seen a female trash hauler in my town anyway. I'm sure there are, but the operator sits in the truck, pushes a button. These two arms come down, pick up the trash bin and dump it in the back, and they drive on. So, when I say that to women, they're like, oh, I never thought about that. I'm like, well, maybe you should.
Yeah. Yeah. Quite honestly, to me, that kind of takes the fun out of that job. Because I remember as a kid, I would look at the trash guy and go, look at those guys that get to ride on the back of that truck all over town. That's really cool. Oh, how times have changed. Now I don't even want to get out of my cab.
This is true.
All right. So let's speak about your membership a little bit. You mentioned that about 18% were men.
Yeah, about 18%. Yeah.
Okay. What is the other breakdown? Are they mostly truck drivers? Are they mostly office workers? Can you give us some breakdown on that?
Sure. I don't have the exact data in front of me, but the typical member is a trucking company. And then in their membership, like it's $1,100 for someone to be a corporate member if they're over 250 employees, and under 250 employees, it's $550 a year. And so they'll get, let's say a big company will get 10 memberships under it. So they'll add people. And so we have both individual and corporate members, which is a little odd because typically it's one or the other. Right. So it's a hybrid. But we have truck driving schools, carriers, manufacturers. And when I say manufacturers, it's both the tractor and trailer and lots of vendors. And like I said, about 400 of our members are drivers, which that's why we started the Driver Ambassador Program, because we would like to increase the number of drivers who are members. And then anyone can be a member if they support our mission, which is kind of an odd entry, point. But we just tell people, if you support our mission. And so the resources really are geared, a lot of the things that we do are for drivers, like working on the truck cab design and ergonomics. We work with the truck stops and safety and security. And then a lot of the information that we provide is for carriers, like how to attract and retain drivers and anti-harassment guides and best practices and things like that. So it's funny because drivers say, well, you're just for drivers. And I don't know how I can make it any clearer that we're for anyone who supports our mission. I should also add, a driver membership is $30 a year. And we do have lifetime memberships because we were asked for them. But a student pays $10 a year to be a member because we want them to join so we can mentor them. And then once they become, a full driver, the second year, then it would go up to $30. So it's really not a big expensive membership cost if you're an individual.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because when you said 550, I mean, I've looked at the website, so I knew, but I thought we got to get back around and cover this because we might have lost some people there, So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I meant, but when you're an individual, then you count as one. So when I say we have about 5,400 members, like a corporate member counts as one, and then if they fill their 10 slots under them, that would be 10. So, and then individuals. So it really is quite a mix of individuals. And, it's interesting because I'll ask the truck cab manufacturers or the trailer manufacturers, and I'll say to them, we really don't have a lot of resources for you. You don't need an anti-harassment guide. You don't need a recruiting guide. Why do you join Women in Trucking? And the response is, we support your mission. We want to see more women in this industry everywhere.
Yeah, That is a good point. So you saying that, like, if you are a member, the money that you donate or, you pay for the membership, that goes towards the overall cause. Is there anything like, I mean, that's great. That's fabulous. But, is there anything that like the individual member gets, what I mean, as an individual benefit?
Yes. I'm glad you asked that.
Okay.
So, if you join as an individual, you're going to get a welcome kit with our pin on it, membership materials. And then we have a weekly newsletter that comes out every Wednesday morning called the WIT e-News. And then you'll get a copy of the magazine. You also get invitations to all of our events. So like we'll have the Salute to Women Behind the Wheel at the Mid-America Trucking Show. You get a prize of all this and lots of information in our weekly newsletter on industry happenings, things, everything from empowerment, a lot of women's issues, but also a lot of industry information. So we want to be a resource. We want to educate. And then once you're a member, we have a members only section on our website and you can get discounts on products and services offered through our members. Also, we have a mentoring page. If you want to mentor or want to be a mentor. And then we have what we call the Engage platform. It's our social media platform, but you have to be a member to be able to go in on it. And then you can connect with other people and maybe you have a job title that's like someone else's and you want to just kind of benchmark or something. So lots of opportunities for connecting. The number one reason people join is for networking. So that's what we're all about.
Okay. You mentioned a conference. What's that all about?
Well, a few years ago, we decided that we wanted a way to meet people in person. And so about 5 years ago, we had our very first Women in Trucking Accelerate Conference and Expo. We had 300 people at our very first conference. This past year was our fifth conference. We were at 1,124. So obviously we're striking a nerve and hitting the right targets. But the conference is really about advancing yourself in the trucking industry. And we have reduced rates for professional drivers. We have a professional driver track. We also have a track for people in HR, those in sales and marketing, and those in operations. And some of the speakers are, things about negotiation skills or maybe branding yourself or communication styles or things like that. But then if you go in the tracks, we actually have industry experts who either do presentations or are on panels. So it's really about networking and information.
Okay, so this isn't one of those conferences where you're stuck listening to whoever. You can kind of pick and choose who you want to go listen to.
That's correct. There's different tracks, and it's about a 2.5-day conference, and we do lots of fun things in the evening. We have receptions every night, and it's just a lot of fun. And even at our luncheons, it's a working lunch. You grab a box lunch and you sit down at a table, and there are posters at each table showing what the topic of that table is. So you sit at that table, there will be a moderator, and you can have a discussion about that topic over lunch, which everyone seems to love. They love the kind of informal working lunch type thing.
Yeah, I think I saw a photo of that on your website, didn't I? It looked like everybody was sitting around chatting.
Exactly.
I saw one dude right in the middle of the page.
Of the 1,100 people, 85% are women. So it's really different to go to a trucking industry event with 85% women.
Yeah. Guys, if you want to go to this conference, great. Just don't be overwhelmed and don't flirt with all of them, please. Because they'll kick you out. She's already said it. They'll kick you out.
True.
All right. You mentioned mentors. What is a mentor and what do they do?
Well, a mentor is someone who you can tap into their wisdom. So typically a mentor is doing the job that you're trying to learn. So say if you just finished truck driving school and you want someone that you can call and say, hey, I've got a question. I don't know where to ask. And you ask somebody, they're going to help you be successful. If you're maybe in the office, you might want to find a mentor of someone who's in the job that you want to be in eventually. And you know what? They don't have to be older than you. They can be younger than you. And it doesn't have to be a woman. It can be a man. So just somebody who's going to give you insight and help you avoid some of the mistakes they made along the way.
Yeah. Now are these mentors, are they like, is that just kind of like a title and like they might have 5 or 6 people that call them, or is it just just kind of random, you find a mentor within the group? How's that work?
Yeah, we actually have on our website, you click on and you put who you are and what you're willing to talk about as a mentor. So let's say you're in sales. Let's say you're selling trucks, and you say, well, I'm selling trucks. I'd love to mentor someone who's interested in selling trucks. So it's really looking at someone who's doing the job, or maybe at a higher level in your company or in the industry, and you want to move up to that level. So you just want to learn from someone and not make the mistakes they did. Get their insight.
Okay. All right. So how would a member find a mentor? Is it just just in the community, or is there a specific spot on the webpage? How do they know who to find?
They'd have to go on the website and log into the members only section. That's where they'll find the discounts on products and services. They'll find some information that we don't want the general public to see, because otherwise it wouldn't pay to be a member, if you're not getting valuable resources. So once they're a member, then they can log in the members only page, and then they can go on the mentor site and post that either they want to be a mentor or that they want a mentor, and then we'll match them up.
Link them up. That's really cool. Yeah. Boy, I cannot stress how much a mentorship helps. Now, I don't have like an official mentor at this LTL company, but I don't know if you know this about LTL, but when you go from over the road to LTL, there's a big change, especially when there's a union involved. There's all kinds of union rules. And I was lucky that the place that I got hired on in Joplin, Missouri, they were like, all the guys were like, you got to keep in constant contact with us over the next 6 months, or you're going to lose so much money. And boy, you can really tell, because the people who don't keep in contact with them have lost a bunch of money. And we see it happening. They're not claiming layover times and, breakdown times and things like that when they could. So just the fact that I have a group, I don't have one mentor at this company. I've got like 5 or 6 that I can call just any time. And they all answer. And boy, it's made everything so great. And I have not missed any money, which is very important to me. And it's even more important to the evil overlord.
Well, I'll tell you, Todd, I run an association. So I'm, the CEO and president. And so to run an association, you work for a board of directors, but you still have staff who work for you, but you're accountable to your members. So it's kind of a different position. So it's nice for me to have a mentor in association management who understands it's kind of, it's a different way to operate. My boss can change every year, and that's just kind of odd. I mean, it's hard for people to put their heads around it, but that's my world. And so I have mentors in association management because they get what I go through.
Yeah. I listen to a lot of online business podcasts and stuff like that. And it's funny how many you always hear these people, like you're a president, you're a CEO of this organization, and you hear, I hear all these podcasters, they're famous and everything. And they're like, yeah, I was talking to my mentor the other day. And you're like, wait a second, you are the mentor. You're not supposed to be mentored. But even people in with influential positions have mentors themselves. There's always somebody who knows more than you.
Yes. And it's really nice to have somebody to ask questions.
Yeah. I find it funny at my company, cause I have 22 years of experience, and I come in here. Well, when I was over the road, I'd be in a break room or whatever, and we'd be talking about experience, and somebody would say, wow, 22 years of experience. Wow. That's a lot, man. Oh man. And they'd start asking me questions. I come into this union job, these guys, 30, 40, 45 years of experience, it's like, oh, they're calling me a pup, it's like,
you're the new kid on the block.
I totally am the new kid. Oh, well, it's a nice change of pace. It really broke things up for me.
Aw, and you'll be there someday.
Yeah. And then everybody can annoy me with all their questions. Great.
There you go. There you go.
No, I like it. I kind of have the heart of a teacher. Boy, that really is what it takes to be a mentor. You really got to want to do it, I mean, I'm assuming the community in general, just having a bunch of other like-minded people, is an advantage.
It is. And I would also point to our Facebook page, which is run by the admins are all professional drivers. And so the Facebook page is a very welcoming page, and it's free. It's the Women in Trucking Facebook page. Facebook is free. Mm-hmm. And lots of questions. The admins will go post on there and post safety questions and say, hey, what would you do if you're in this situation? And what's funny about it is they have about 11,000 members on there, and they've been at about 11,000 because they kick them off as fast as they apply, because they don't allow recruiting.
Okay.
I'm sure drivers are sick and tired of seeing recruiting ads.
Oh, yeah.
They don't allow accident photos. They said, you see enough of that on the road. We don't want it on our page.
Amen. Thank you. Yes.
Yep. And it's a lot of questions. It's a safe place for people to ask questions, men and women. It's not just women on the Facebook page, and they don't allow selfies. They want people to be safe. But they really encourage asking questions. So I would, tell people to look for the Women in Trucking Facebook page. It's got the picture of our Salute to Women Behind the Wheel, where they're wearing the red T-shirts. And it's just a very welcoming environment, and no profanity. They'll kick you off.
Yeah.
If they're profane, because we have a lot of Girl Scouts who we send to our Facebook page to learn about the trucking industry. So we don't want truck drivers swearing or fighting with each other.
Yeah.
I mean, on social media, it's just horrible. So
it really is.
The rules are real strict, and the admins are all professional drivers. So I would say if people want to know more about women in trucking, go to the website, womenintrucking.org, but also look at the Facebook page and just, connect with other female drivers. And Todd, one other thing you asked about benefits. We also have a Women in Trucking Scholarship Foundation, and we give out scholarships to people looking for a career in trucking, whether it's a CDL technician. We've given a lot of female diesel techs scholarships, and then safety, if you're in a safety role. And then the fourth one we loosely define as leadership. So if you're working in the trucking industry and you want to advance your career, apply for a scholarship. We gave out, I think it was about $38,000 last year in scholarships.
Cool, man. That's awesome.
Yeah. We just need to promote the trucking industry, right?
Yeah, we do. We do. Free money's always good. I'm a notorious cheapskate, so I like free money. Who doesn't like free money? Yeah. Yeah. Now, just to be clear, that Facebook page is public?
They need to apply, and they need to answer questions. They need to answer questions about whether you're a recruiter and whether you're willing to abide by the rules. So they can go in and apply, and they'll be approved based on the responses.
Okay. Yeah. So easy peasy stuff. Yeah. I love communities like this because I'll be joining this community as soon as we get off the phone here. Cause I just love these communities because, like you said, social media is so full of hate. And, I do my trucker dump groups. I have a Slack group and a Facebook page, nowhere near your numbers. I'm aspiring, but nowhere near that. But yeah, it's the same way. You have one offense, you get one warning, and then you're off, I'm not quite as strict on the language, but if you're cursing just for the sake of cursing, I ask you not to do that. But if you, if you're really mad about something, I understand. So,
well, and recruiting, you don't want to go on a page and have recruiters on there, recruiting all the time. So the admins are really strict about making sure. And here's another thing that I love about it is if somebody gets on the page and says, hey, I'm thinking of going to Swift or Werner, and people start responding, the rules are you can talk about your own experience, but I don't want to hear my uncle's cousin's mom's grandma's aunt boyfriend, went there and had a bad experience. I just don't want to hear it.
I'm so glad you get that because, seriously, like with my podcast, I get a lot of requests for recruiters, big companies wanting to come on here and recruit. And I'm just not interested in that because it's like I'm putting my name behind that going, here, go to work for this company, but I've never worked there. I don't have a dang clue what I'm talking about. I'm promoting something that this isn't the venue for it. I'm saying, like, if I wanted to start a different podcast that just promoted recruiting, that's fine because that's what people are downloading and they're expecting. But, for me to come in and say, hey, go check out this company. They're an awesome company. I don't know anything about them.
Right.
I can't say they're a great company to drive for because I've never done it. So it's great that you're cutting that crap off the legs. That's good. Yeah.
And it's also a great way for our members will come in and ask. So I'm going to give you an example. one huge truck stop chain came to us and said, what are your drivers? How can we improve the showers? And so I went on the page and I said, all right, TA Petro is asking how they can improve the showers. I don't want you to complain about their showers because that's not helping anyone, but how can they make them better? Mm-hmm. And all the responses were amazing. They said, oh, make sure the vents are clean, make sure that the exchange of air in the summer makes so that you can cool off and not, especially in August, if it's, you're sweaty, you don't want to walk out all wet.
Right.
So TA Petro took all the responses and went back, and now they make their managers shower in their own truck stop shower at least once a month. Secondly, they bought every manager a little unit that goes up to the vent and measures the airflow out of the vent.
Wow.
And they make them clean the vents on a regular schedule to make sure that there's no fur hanging off the vent. And so I went back on the Facebook page and I said, see, you have a voice here.
Yeah.
And we can change this industry.
Yeah, that's awesome. And anybody who knows about showers, just as a side note, if you've been driving for quite a while, you know how nasty they used to be. And you go into truck stops nowadays and showers are pretty darn nice. So if women out there are worried about that aspect of it, which quite honestly, showers were one of the things the evil overlord hated the most about trucking. And, nowadays I'm like, it's really not like that anymore. They're pretty clean nowadays. So that's great. They're actually listening, and it's great that, they're listening to your group specifically. That's pretty awesome.
Well, they know that we've got a lot of comments and drivers love to give their feedback, so we can get it.
No, you don't say. All right. So if a listener wants to learn more about the Women in Trucking Association, where would you suggest they go? Where to start?
Well, I would have them look at our website, and it's just womenintrucking.org. You have to spell it out, womenintrucking.org. And on the website, you can look at past publications, our magazine. You can find out a lot about us. Read my blog. And then we also have a driver blog, or a member blog, I should say. We also have a member of the month, so they can read about our members and just read about, see our schedule. We have a calendar on there. We do so much, and it's really, the website is just a way to get information, and then click on the Join Now button and become a member.
Okay. I'm going to put links to both of these in the show notes. So, if you know how to access those show notes, you can click on it right there and go directly and do what you got to do.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. So, is there any way people can reach out to you? What's your contact info?
Well, our toll-free number is 888-464-9482. But it's probably easier to just, if they want to go to the website, click on one of the, click on the Join Now. But also, if they want to get information from someone, there's a list of our staff on there. So they can, depending on if they want to know more about the Girl Scout patch or the image team or whatever, just click on one of those and they'll get one of us.
Okay. Is there other social media or anything you'd like other than the Facebook page?
We have a huge LinkedIn group, and they can follow me on Twitter. We have about, I think, 24,000 Twitter followers. So, and it's just Women in Trucking. Same thing with LinkedIn, Women in Trucking group. So they can join us on and any one of those. And then we also now have Pinterest as well. So it's all under Women in Trucking.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, Ellen, thank you for coming on the show. This has been a great interview. I've had a lot of fun talking to you, and I hope I wish you only the best for this organization. I know personally I'm going to be joining the Facebook page as soon as we're done, and I am going to be joining the Women in Trucking Association also as soon as we're done.
Well, thank you so much, Todd. I appreciate it.
Okay. And everybody else, you do it too. Do it now. All right. Well, you have a good day. I'm sorry if I kept you a little bit too long.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine. And you have a great rest of the day too. And thanks so much, Todd.
All right. Well, I told you that was a lot of fun. Again, I know we've said it a million times already, but be sure to go over to womenintrucking.org to get a start on all this stuff. You can join the Facebook page, check them out on Twitter, Pinterest, all that good stuff. And again, thanks to Ellen for being on the show. That was a lot of fun. She's a great interview. She was a little surprised that it was this long because, as she said, most of the interview she does, end up being like tiny little segments of 6 minutes or something like that. Well, she got plenty of time to talk about women in trucking. So I hope this works out nicely for her and me both. So I guess we've got one more segment, don't we? Let's do it.
Yo, bud, where do you want this load of feedback?
Man, oh man, what am I supposed to do about this feedback section? I mean, I don't have anybody yelling at me about tailgating. I don't have anybody calling me a racist or a bigot. I don't even have anybody telling me they'd like to crap down my dead wife's neck. So I don't know what to do with this. I just have 3 nice people write in. They're not commenting about any particular episode or anything like that. They just wanted to write in to thank me or just tell me a little bit about themselves, which I'm cool with. If you just want to write in and tell me a little bit about yourself or send in an audio comment, you can do that at truckerdump@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. So let's start out with Daniel Sleeves White. He says, "Hi Todd, Daniel here. Another Aussie from all the way in Tasmania." Well, g'day, mate. Yeah, I don't know why. What's wrong with me? Anyway, he says, "Love your podcast. Love hearing about your industry and comparing it to ours. I'm 33 years old and I've been driving semi-B trains since I was 19 and I'm a 3rd generation trucker. My buddy and I recently visited the southern states back in July. One major thing we noticed is how much better the flow of traffic was due to no speed limiters. Please don't allow that law to be passed like it is here in Australia at 100 kilometers per hour. That's 62 mile an hour. Anyhow, keep up the great work. If you'd love to know more or anything about the trucking industry here in Australia, I'm more than happy to answer any questions." Well, thanks for the offer there, Daniel. I'll keep that in mind. I got a few Aussie listeners and I love it. It's pretty awesome. And I almost went into another Australian accent, but I will spare you. You're welcome. Anyway, Daniel, thanks for writing in. I do appreciate it. Next up, we've got Brandon Thompson. He writes, "Hey there, Todd. I'd like to join the Slack group. I feel I could contribute a little bit, but learn a lot from the group. Assuming it's talking about driving for the most part." Okay, well, Brandon, well, we do talk about truck driving quite a bit in there, but there is also just a bunch of neato guys in there just talking about, did I just say neato? I said neato, didn't I? Yeah, I said neato. Wow. What a dork. Anyway, yes, there is a great group of guys in there and we just talk about whatever's on our mind. You know, it's a nice place to go that is a group of like-minded folks that don't like to talk about, you know, all kinds of religious stuff that's going to piss people off or political stuff that piss people off. We just like to get along in there. As a matter of fact, if we get anybody trolling in there, I'm going to kick them out faster than Daniel's truck. Let's put it that way. So anyway, for those of you who think Brandon might be speaking Chinese here, what's a Slack group thing all about? Okay. I'm sorry. If you've heard this a million times, just, I don't know, fast forward 30 seconds or something. Anyway, Slack is basically a glorified chat group. I have one for the Trucker Dump group. And I'll have links in the show notes to both of these groups. And we also have one for Apple loving, truckers, guys who like their iPhones and their iPads and their Macintoshes and stuff like that. You can join either of those groups just by clicking on the links in the show notes down there. But anyway, it's like I said, it's just a great group of guys. It's really handy for new drivers because, you know, there's almost someone there. There's pretty much somebody in there 24 hours a day. So if you were to get in a bind and didn't know what to do in a situation, you could reach out, and we've got hundreds of years of combined experience in that group. So, you know, it's really handy for new folks. If you're a new driver, I would highly recommend you join the Trucker Dump Slack group. Then if you love your tech, join the other one. Also, there are plenty of guys who are in both groups. So anyway, Brandon goes on and says, "Just to introduce myself a little bit, I'm a 20-year-old local Moffat delivery trailer driver for a lumber company in Massachusetts. I've been driving for just about 2 years, but I feel I have a good amount of experience as far as driving locally goes, seeing as how I drive with some of the most reckless drivers in the United States." He says, "From what I've heard and seen myself." Yeah, I'll give you that. Massachusetts, not too bad out west, I guess. But when you're in the eastern Massachusetts, yeah, what a nightmare. Boston, ugh, you can keep that. Anyway, he goes on and offers his services. If I'm ever looking for an interview with a Moffat truck driver, he'd be happy to step in. I do appreciate that, Brandon. Although, like I pointed out to him, that is very similar. Delivering lumber is very similar to what Shannon Holden did with the, the rental equipment, delivering on a lot of job sites and stuff like that. So if we get to that point, I may reach out to Brandon and have him on here to talk about, if nothing else, driving that cool little forklift that attaches to the back of the trailer. I love to drive one of those. They look fun. Anyway, after he goes on, he says, I'm rambling at this point, but you do the same at times. Boy, that's exactly what I'm doing right now, Brandon. Anyway, he says, either way, looking forward to your reply and more Trucker Dump episodes. Love listening to all the stories and tips you have. Keep her sunny side up, Brandon. Well, Brandon, thanks for writing, and I appreciate it. And he is in the Slack group, and he is taking part. Some people get in the Slack group and they just sit back and they don't really participate, and that's fine if that's the way you want to roll. But Brandon's jumping right in there, so having a good time over there. Again, links in the show notes to those Slack groups if you're interested. And if you're not into that, you can join the Facebook group, link in the show notes also, or you can just search for Trucker Dump Podcast over there on Facebook. And be sure to like that. I don't really know what that does, but I'm trying to be more active in Facebook. Of course, I've been saying that for years. Anyway, I could use all the help I can get in there. Next up, we're going to hear from Steve Clark. He writes, I'm a brother in Christ, 54 years young, married to my high school sweetheart for 35 years. Way back when I was 21, I was offered an apprenticeship to get my CDL and learn from an experienced owner-operator in Ontario, Canada. He lived there at the time. He said I wanted to do it so bad, but my wife and I had a baby and had expected more to come, so I took the safe and stable route, he puts that in quotes, to become a police officer. Yeah, put that in quotes, I think. I don't think being a police officer is safe and stable, but I get your drift there, Steve. He goes on and says, no regrets at this point, but the dream of driving a truck remains. My wife and I have raised 5 boys. Wow. Whew. Patience of a saint. And he says, and I have my 2 youngest entering high school. So you could say I'm getting close to my empty nest in the next few years. He says, I have a good, stable career with a good salary, but my dream is to retire to truck driving. I had a commercial license many years ago when I worked part-time on my days off hauling wheat and other produce in a tandem axle dump truck. I'm enjoying your book and finding it very helpful in keeping my dream alive. Lord willing, my dream is to work for 5 more years and then retire, get my CDL, and sign on with a mega carrier to learn the ropes. Schneider has an interesting part-time drive program near me, and having connected with one of their part-time drivers, it sounds like it might be a perfect fit for me. If you have any suggestions, advice, feel free to share. Thanks again for your book. Well, thanks, Steve, for buying the book. I appreciate it. And you know what? I have never heard this purpose for the book before. I've heard people say it really helped me understand the trucking industry wasn't sure if I wanted to be a part of it or not, but this book really helped me understand that. But I've also heard it was just an entertaining read. They didn't really learn anything from it, or they enjoyed the audiobook aspect of it, and listening to me read. But I've never heard anybody say it keeps the dream alive, but if it does, then great. I'm glad it works for you, Steve. And thanks for writing in, Steve, and thanks for being a police officer all those years. I know you guys are often unappreciated, but for me and the evil overlord, we appreciate you. All right, well, that about wraps it up. As you can tell, we covered all of the feedback I had last week, and I just had 3 more this last week. There I go again. Last episode, and we had 3 more this time around, but I do not have any for the next podcast. So if you want to be heard, send your audio comment. I love audio comments. It's great to hear other voices on the podcast other than just me jabbering on and on, or, as Brandon put it, rambling. He ain't wrong. So anyway, again, if you've got comments or questions or concerns or suggestions or anything like that, give me a shout at truckerdump@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. All right. Let's say we toss a tarp on this sucker, maybe throw some of those bright pink straps over the top of it, tie that sucker down, and get on out of here. Okay. What are your thoughts on women in trucking? If you're for it, great. Let me hear about it. If not, well, go ahead and let me hear about it anyway. Just don't expect me to agree with you, because you're wrong. Shoot me an email at truckerdump@gmail.com. Find me on Twitter at Todd McCann. That's 2 D's, 2 C's, and 2 N's. Or everything else I do is at abouttruckdriving.com, including all the show notes for this episode. Just search for TD141 and click away. And of course, you'll find the books there. And lastly, if you enjoy the show, please tell a friend. Word of mouth means more than any other kind of promotion. As always, thanks for listening. So until next time, drive safe and stay out of my way. You know, maybe that's my conscience saying conscience. What the word? I can't say conscience. Okay, going back to okay, yeah, that's probably going in the blooper reel. All right. That's great. Okay. All right. Well, I will shoot you a message as soon as this goes live. It's probably going to be, closer to probably the last day of the month. That's usually how I roll.
Okay.
Unfortunately. I'd say I'm going to have a podcast out in January, and it comes out January 31st at 11:58, What happened? My internet went out. Oh, dear Lord. No. By the way, can you send me an email with all those links and stuff in there so I can make sure I get those in the show notes?
Actually, I think if you have an email from me, they're all below my signature.
Oh, they're in the signature. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
I can send it again if you want me to.
No, I got it.
Okay.
I got it. I'm just not smart enough to look down there. It's designed to make your job easier by reducing strain on your back, your neck, your arms. It just necks. Wow. Please don't allow that law to be passed like it is here in Australia at 100 kilometers per second. 100 kilometers per second. Wow. What am I talking about? Anyhow, keep up the great work. If you'd love to know... Ugh, good Lord. Why is it so hard to say? Next up, we're going to hear from Steve Clark. He wrote. Wow. My grammar is stellar today. Yeah, that's what I was getting ready to ask. The money, did you get and wow, holy moly. Oh.
Dodge doesn't know what he's doing.